If you are worried about buying a bad first investment property and having it cost you thousands of dollars in the long run, then this video is for you. Hey everyone, I'm Antonio and I help beginner real estate investors buy their first investment property confidently. In order to avoid buying a bad first deal, let me tell you a little bit of story about how I did it. At this point in my career, I'm working as a senior software developer at a digital marketing company in New York City. And it's great. I get to live in New York City and have tons of fun. I've been reading books about real estate investing. I have been listening to Bigger Pockets podcasts, and I've been watching hours of videos from Grant Cardone talking to me about real estate investing.
He says the wild just watch.
Please lend me 70 grand, mama. I promise not to use it on the cocaine this time.
My entire life, my parents told me,
Hondo, you gotta go to college. We're gonna make the money. And then when we get the money, we're gonna buy the real estate. See if that can fix things up, you know?
So it had always been my goal to get started with real estate investing and buy that first house and make sure I don't make any mistakes because my family and everyone else was depending on it. On a nice summer day, I'm sitting in my nice Manhattan apartment and I get an email from my landlord saying that he wants to raise the rents in my already expensive ass Manhattan apartment by 15% for next year's lease. I was immediately angry and frustrated because here I knew that I was already paying over $2,000 a month for my apartment that wasn't even that nice. I knew I needed to be on the owner side of things and not on the renting side of things. I was fed up and this put me over the edge. I knew I had to find a way to get into the investing side. So I asked myself, how can I do this now? So I right away went to my bank account and took a look. And I only had 15K in my account. Just so you know, in New York City, 15K is just enough to get you a nice little box next to the other homeless person on the street. I realized I didn't have nearly enough money to buy a first property, let alone I had no idea how to even go out and find a good deal. And on top of all that, I was scared because I was putting all of my money into this real estate investing and hoping that it worked.
I'm a savage. Classy, bougie, ratchet. Sassy, moody, nasty. Acting, stupid, what's happening? What's happening? Bitch, I'm a savage.
You know, the truth is that I was afraid of buying that first investment property and having it cost me thousands of dollars because I made a mistake or I missed something. And then on top of all that, I would be a failure in front of my family and friends. And if you know my family or my friends, they would legit never let me live that down. Never. I'm serious, never. I would be the laughing stock for a long time. But I still knew I needed to find a way. I realized that I was limited on what I wanted to do. I knew I had to commute at least to my job, so I knew I had to be somewhere within New York City's range. So the first place I looked was Manhattan. Little did I realize that the cheapest apartment in Manhattan at that point in time was only 600K, with only 6 apartments even under 800K on the entire island. Even if I bought that 600K one, it likely would not be a good deal because I was just investing in it to live and not investing in it to rent out to other people. So I quickly realized that I am too broke for Manhattan. I cannot afford to buy an investment property here and I needed to start looking somewhere else. So I immediately started looking at towns right outside of New York City and places that were easily commutable to my job. I looked at towns that had train lines directly into New York City and buses, you name it, whatever form of transportation I could take, I looked at it. My game plan at this point was buying a house with an FHA loan and then hopefully renting it out to a few friends. This way I can still get to live and start to invest at the same time. So I started looking at 3 towns, Newark, Kearny, and Harrison. I looked for a full month, scouring the MLS, and I could not find a single good deal, one that at least I could afford. It just seemed like that I was competing with all these people that had way more money and way more connections than me. Every day, houses would come on the market and go right off the market because investors with cash would come in and buy the houses.
Without you, it's hard to survive. 'Cause every time we touch, I get this feeling.
So I thought I was never gonna be able to find a good deal. Now, this was a great lesson. I was looking at 3 different locations, and because I was looking in 3 different locations, I had no idea what the numbers were for any of the individual locations itself. I decided to pick random numbers that I would use for the income and the expenses of the property to run an analysis, and because of that, I couldn't find any good deals. So not only did I not know what location I was investing in, I also could not find a good deal because I didn't have clear numbers for any any of the areas that I was looking at. So I headed back to Brandon Turner's book on rental property investing to try to figure out how to pick a location to invest in. And after reading that chapter 5 times, I felt a little bit better about it, but it wasn't clear to me exactly how to find a location to invest in. Now, if you know me at all, I'm a very formulaic, step-by-step process type person. Even ask my girlfriend. Seriously, ask my girlfriend. She says I can't treat her like a formula. Anyways, the book did not give me a step-by-step process to pick a location based off of data. So I had to do tons of research to figure out and come up with a formula in order to do this myself. So now, even though I came up with a way to find a location to invest in, I couldn't invest because I just didn't have enough money to invest in any of the locations I was looking at. These areas were filled with appreciation and tons of competition because lots of people with money from New York City were coming in and investing here. After this, I was ready to give up, and I just said to myself, that's it, I'm gonna go back to learning, saving, and networking. A few months later, one day after work, I saw this meetup online. I decided to go to it as an entrepreneurship meetup in New York City. And while I was there, I talked to a few different people, but then there was this one guy who was sitting on the side who looked interesting. He looked like he knew something. He looked like he had a lot more experience, but he wasn't talking to anyone. After passing him by a few different times, I finally mustered up the courage to go ask him what he did. It turned out that he was a real estate investor. So I decided to ask him about his story and how he got started. After a few minutes of hearing his conversation, I was like, wow, this guy could be the mentor that I was looking for. Oh my God. I kindly asked him, I said, hey, would you be okay with answering an email of mine, maybe a question that I had once a month? You're not gonna believe this. He straight up told me no. Yeah, this guy was right away. I was heated. I was like, how can anyone be that mean to someone who's trying to start and needs some help? But then he stopped and said,
Look, after talking to you, you know everything you need to get started. Just forget about appreciation and just focus on cash flow.
It finally clicked. This whole time, I was trying to find the perfect location to invest in. And I was trying to find a property that would be recession proof because I was scared of the home value dropping. But I shouldn't care about the home value dropping. And I shouldn't try to look for a perfect location where I can get amazing appreciation because I'm trying to be a buy and hold investor. And a buy and hold investor invests for cash flow. The thought of buying a property just to see the value drop right after I buy it because we enter a recession, that was scary. So I decided I was just gonna analyze deal after deal until I became good at it. Now, after doing that, my confidence increased a bunch. But the issue was I still didn't know where I was gonna invest because I just didn't have the money for where I was analyzing deals. And at this point, I started calling agents in random parts of the country, like Las Vegas, Austin, Atlanta. Some of these places I hadn't even been before. And not knowing anything about those areas and not knowing anything about what could happen there was scary and overwhelming, on top of the fact that I didn't even know how to really invest because it was my first time. So I was overwhelmed and I was ready to give up once again. But then the thought came back into my head. You just need cash flow. You don't need appreciation. This whole time I was looking into cities that were growing, and because they were growing, they had a lot more appreciation and they had a lot more competition and flood of investors that had tons of money. Those investors have tons of people that know so much information about the area, and I didn't have that. So how could I even compete? That's when Ewing, New Jersey came into my head because I hadn't lived there for 5 years. So I immediately started looking on Zillow, and I found some properties I like, and I ran some rough numbers based on what I remembered when I lived there. When I found the first one, I called up an agent and I said, I want to go see a property this weekend. And I scheduled some time to go see it. And that's when everything changed. When I finally started taking consistent action, instead of just reading and learning, I decided to start going to see properties, analyzing deals, and making offers. That changed me for the better. After making 9 offers, I finally got a triplex that was fully rented. And it really proved my confidence to be true because I saw the numbers go from analysis, where they were working, all the way till when I got checks and the numbers were exactly the same. This proved that if the numbers work, the numbers work. From my experience, I realized how tough it can be to get started with real estate investing because you're scared of buying a bad first deal that's gonna cost you thousands of dollars and make you look like a failure to everyone else you know. This is why I took all my experience and knowledge and combined it into this PDF that tells you the 5 proven strategies that you need to avoid buying a bad first deal and make sure it's a great one. Each strategy has an action step that you can take right now to get started. Click the link in the description down low so you can go ahead and download your free copy of the PDF now.